Hello, everyone. My name is Kimatina. I am a Google certified trainer and a top contributor in the G Suite for Education Help Forum. Today is March 6, 2018, and I wanted to bring this show to you today to give you a few good tips on using Google Forms that you may not be aware of. So, without further ado, let's get started. All right. So I'm going to assume that people know how to use Google Forms. If you don't, or you don't have any background knowledge about Google Forms, I'll give you some right now. Google Forms is part of the G Suite, and it will allow you to collect data from your audience. In education, you can use it for quizzes, you can use it for exit tickets, you could use it for uh, check-in for understanding, do nows, any type of a formative assessment you can use a Google form for. You can also use it for surveys, for professional development. So Google Forms is a very powerful app that will allow you to collect data on your audience. So in order to use Google Forms, you have to access it through Google Drive, or you can download the mobile app. But for this episode of the Sweet Talk, I want to go over how to use the response validation in your questions in Google Forms. And I want to use the add-on called Form Limiter because a lot of people do not know how to turn off a form, and I'm going to show you how to do that or disable that with the Form Limiter add-on. And I want to show you how to insert digital mathematical expressions into your Google form so that you can send out a quiz to your students. So I am going to share my screen. All right, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to use the data validation or the response validation in a question in a Google form. So as you can see here, I'm in Google Drive, and in order for me to create a new form, I go to New, I go down to More, and I go to Google Forms. And your form will be created in your folder. I already have a form created, so I'm just going to open up that one and use that one. And this is the form here this is what the form questions look like. So every time I create a form, I always have a question for the user to enter their name. That's just a habit of mine that I always do because when the responses are collected in a spreadsheet, I can manipulate the data according to their name if I wanted to. It's just my habit, but you certainly don't have to. You can go into the settings and you can always, where is it in here? You can always, here it is, collect email addresses of people in your who are responding to your quiz or to your survey. So I always put a question for your name. I always put a question for them to enter their email address. And again, you don't have to, but it's always, you may want to manipulate the data in a certain way. So that's why I always have these two questions at the top of my form. So what I want to do first is actually I want to show you how to disable a quiz or form at a certain time. And then in order to do that, you have to install the Form Limiter add-on. So if you go over to the three dots, the snowman menu, you can go down to add-ons. And then in here, you'd have to install the Form Limiter add-on. And you can search for it right up top here in the search bar. And I already have it installed, so you would just click on free and you would install it. And in Forms, you could always tell you have add-ons installed because you have a little puzzle piece here in the top right corner. So once that's installed, I can enable the form limiter add-on. So what I want to do first is I want to set a limit. And you can select different types of limits for your form. So you can select the form to disable according to a date and time, according to a number of form responses, or according to a spreadsheet value. For educators, for me, in my experience in my school, most teachers want the form to be disabled at a specific date and time. So that's what I'm going to showcase here in this example. So I'm going to set date and time, and I will put today's date down, and I want the form to be disabled at, we'll give it, right now my system clock says 5:20 p.m. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the time to be 5:25 because these are in increments of 5 minutes. And I'm going to put PM, Eastern Standard Time. I click set. And now you can see the form limiter is set to disable at March 6, 2018 at 5:25 p.m. I click save and enable. And now this limit is going to be saved. Now, what I want to do is I actually want to show you how to, or actually I'm going to show you that I'm going to be able to enter a response into my form. So I'm going to preview the form, and I'm just going to insert, I don't know, some information in here. And I click submit. It says my response has been recorded. I'm going to go back out, and you can see I have three responses in here. I'm going to preview again. Oops. And we'll submit that response. And you can see I have 4 responses now. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go over some of the other options while we're waiting for the form limiter to expire. But you can see here that my form is active. It is enabled. It accepted my responses from the form. And we're just waiting now for 5:25 to come so that you can see that the form will be disabled. So in the meantime, what I would like to do is I would like to show you the response validation option in a question. So when you want to add a question, you click on the plus sign and just say, I want to add a password to this form because, you know, I want to make sure that there's some kind of security set so that each class they do not share the answers or the questions with one another. I can set a password as a question on my form so that it's specific for each class if I wanted to. So I would enter password. It's going to be a short answer, and I'm going to make it required. And right over here in the snowman menu, I select response validation, and I make sure that's enabled. Now right here, I can put a description if I wanted to. So I can add a description, and I can say, please enter the password to access the form. All right. And what I want to do here is I can select the type of characters I'm going to enter in and check for. So for this example, I'm going to set it as text, and the text contains or doesn't contains an email address or it's a URL address. For this example, I'm going to select contains, and I'm going to set my password here for the form. So I'm just going to put capital TST, and my error message is going to say try again. All right, so what I'm going to do now, and my form response has another minute to go, so this is actually good. So I'm going to drag this up to the top, make it my first question. I'm going to hit preview, and right away it's going to ask me for a password. So if I type TST lowercase, it gives me the error, try again. If I type TST, it allows me to go on to enter the questions into the form. So that's how you can do data response or response validation in a Google form. Now, my time is up. It's 5:25, so we'll give it another minute to make sure that the form is disabled. So again, when you're doing response validation, you would add it onto the question by clicking on the snowman menu, and you go to response validation, and you're able to set what you would like for it to check for the response. And again, what you would do is you can also make the password question its own separate section in the form, so that when the person types in the correct password, it will then go to the first section of the form, which would be your questions, and have them enter their name and email address, etc. All right, so let's see what happens here with my form limiter. So you can see here, it already disabled the form. I just clicked on the response tab here, and it says not accepting responses. So now if I actually go into the form, well, what I'm going to do is let me go back into the questions. I'm going to delete the password question, and I am going to preview it. And right away, it tells me the form is no longer accepting responses. And this is all triggered by that form limiter add-on. So that add-on, can be very useful in a classroom, especially if you have students taking a quiz just for the day, and you want to close it at the end of the day so that they cannot, share their responses or share your questions with anybody. So you can always use the form limiter add-on. Another thing that I wanted to show you was, again, in the response validation. So I'm going to add another question here. Or actually, let me go into the add-ons. So I'm going back into form limiter, and I'm going to remove the setting so that I can actually show you what I want to do next. So I'm going to disable the limit on the form. And now if I go back into responses, I can click accept in responses, and it is now enabled. Okay, so what I want to show you next is I want you to be able to have a response validation on an email address. Again, you have to add a question for the user to enter their email address. And we all know email addresses have a certain format with the @ and a domain name .com or .org. So we can check to make sure that the user is entering a valid email address by using the response validation. So on the question, I can click on the snowman menu and go to response validation. And I can select here text email address. And this is going to actually make sure that the person typed in the correct format for an email address. So I'm going to put in here as the error message, invalid email address. All right, and I made the question required. So now if I go back in and preview it, I can enter my name. And if I type in anything that doesn't have an @ domain.com or domain.org, it's going to give me an error message because, it's not finding that type of format. So as soon as I type in the @ and my domain, the error message goes away because it's specifically looking for that @domain.com or .org format for your email address. So that's also another great validation that you can put on your questions, especially if you're doing, if you're collecting information from parents for them to enter in. You can try to catch some of those typos or those mistakes when they're entering the information in. So those So the form limiter add-on and the response validation I wanted to show you. Now the next thing that I want to show you is for the math teachers out there, if you're creating a quiz, you know, a lot of math teachers don't use digital tools for um, their math quizzes because um, they cannot create the expressions digitally. They have a hard time or it's not easy. Well, there's a cool little website called cogs.com. And if you go to codecogs.com, this website is an open source and it will allow you to create an equation that you can download as an image and insert it into Google Forms or Google Docs or Google Slides or even on a website. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So the first thing that you have to do in your Google form is create a question. I don't know. I'm gonna say select the best answer, and you're gonna make it required. Okay, and just remember this little image icon here because we're gonna be using that. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna go to Code Cogs and I'm gonna go down to Equation Editor. And in my equation editor and the next screen here, I click on in the middle, full panel range. Click to open standalone equation editor. And it's going to show me this window and it opens up in a separate window. So these are all the different symbols that you can use for mathematical equations. You can go through them. If you're a math teacher, you're probably jumping for joy right now. But what I'm going to focus on is the fraction. So what I want to do is I want to click on the fraction button and I want to select it and I'm going to enter in my numerator and denominator. So we'll just put 3/4. And you can see as you type, the image gets populated here in the middle. So I'm going to hit plus because we're adding fractions. And oops, I hit it too many times. Let's do it again. And I want to do, I don't know why it's saying invalid equation, but we'll do 5/8. Okay, so I'm adding two fractions together and you can see here that the equation populated here as an image. So I can download this as an image or onto my computer. So I'm going to download it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my form and I am going to upload that image into my form. So remember I told you to remember this little image icon here in the question in the form? We're going to use that and we're going to upload the image that I just downloaded and I have to find it. So downloads. And at this point I can center it and I can basically, the image is there, it's just that the menu, the snowman menu is there. And what I can do here is I can give the students a few options of, you know, answers for this equation. So let's see if I can make this go away here. I don't know, it's too small, that's why it's not showing it. Let's see. All right. So let's see if I can do this. If I wanted to add the equation as an option for an answer, I can certainly do the same thing. Let's see if it shows it here. It's probably not going to show it up. It shows it a little bit better. But you can see that the image does display. And if I preview it, you can see that the image is showing the equation correctly. It's just in the edit view, it's a little hard to see. So I can prompt the students with equations and they can actually pick the best answer, or I can include the equations in as part of a multiple choice question, whatever, you know, your preference is. But the point is that you can actually insert mathematical equations right into Google Forms very easily. And you can also upload those images to Google Docs or Google Slides also. So those are pretty much, some handy tips that you can do with Google Forms. I'm going to try to continue bringing you some more info every couple weeks with Google Forms because I really think it's a powerful app for teachers to use. And if you're not using it, you're going to want to think twice about it. So I would like you to try it, and get on board with it. Start small, and then you can, gradually go through it and make it more complex as you feel more comfortable with learning the app. I'm going to come back. So, all right. So here I am. So I hope that was helpful. I know that was, a couple little things there, here and there. With the equations didn't show too well in the edit form, but in the edit preview, but you did see the equations display correctly when you were entering in a response. So I hope those 3 tips were very helpful to you. One other thing I want to show you before we call it a day is I was playing around with this AR/VR app. It's called Merge Cube, and I'm not sure if everybody knows what this is. Um, it's actually, this is what it looks like. It's an it's very soft. It's not hard or it's not plastic. It's a hologram cube that you use with a mobile device. So you download the apps from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store to interact with this, and your device turns into a virtual reality or augmented reality environment. And I really found these at Walmart for $1. So I heard everybody was like ranting and raving about these things, how cheap they were. They were $1. They were really like $15 or $16, and they were marked down to 10, then marked down to 5, and people were getting them for $1. So I said, let me try it and see how it is. Well, let me tell you, this was the best thing that I bought for $1. I bought 20 of them. I bought a classroom set. I do find it to be very educational. There's a lot of apps that you can use with them, with the cube. Some of them are for games, but there's 3 educational ones that I found that would be useful in the classroom. One is the aquarium, or My Aquarium app. The other one is My Body app, and the third one is the Galactic Explorer app. And they bring this cube to life via virtual reality or augmented reality. If you're using the virtual reality option, you will need to use your goggles with it. If you're using the augmented reality version of the app, you don't need the goggles, or the 3D goggles, or the ViewMaster goggles. But I did find this to be very, very interesting. It's very easy to use. The apps are free. Some of them are paid for, but the ones that I downloaded were free. And I am going to show you. Let me share my screen with you again. I wrote a blog post about it, and I will share that with you right now. So if you go to the techlady-km.blogspot.com, that's my URL address for my blog, The Tech Lady, and you can come and visit my blog, and you can read all about the merge cube and what I did, and some ideas that you can use with it in class. I give you a lot of a lot of good background information about it. And I'm going to use it with my sixth grade students in my computer science class. But definitely you can use this for elementary students. It's very, very easy to use. They won't have any problems with it. If you were BYOD school, then I would have the students download the apps themselves. Like again, these three that I tested were free. Um, if your school has devices for your students, then I would definitely contact your tech department and ask them to download the apps for you. But I would recommend trying this out first before you go through all that trouble, because you may not find it utilized. You may not utilize it in your classroom. Like I said, if you can, try your local Walmart and see if you can find a merge cube. Um, it is definitely worth it. I do highly recommend it. And again, I was willing to pay $5 for it. And when I got up to the register, it was $1. So even $5, it's definitely worth it. If you're an Amazon Prime member, you may be able to get it through Amazon Prime, but I'm not sure if you're going to get that dollar price for it. But it's definitely worth it. So the apps are available again at the Google Play Store and the Apple Store, and you do have options for VR and AR mode. Um, and it's very easy. I was surprised. It was really, really easy. So I was surprised that I got a good deal on it. And it is, you can use it for educational purposes. But again, I would make your students be held accountable. I would create some type of worksheet so that they can answer questions. Also, you can have them on their devices. You can record. They can record what they're exploring through the app and download that small video to their device, and then they can share that small video with you in Google Classroom. So there are alternatives on trying to keep students accountable. All right, well, I wanted to share that quick object with you. I think that it was well worth it. And I wanted to share my Google Form tips with you also. So I hope you found that helpful. I'm planning on having another show in possibly two to 3 weeks. So I hope that you can come back and watch again. Until then, thank you for joining me, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.